Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Executive Code podcast. There's something that I want to discuss on this particular episode today, and for a lot of people, it's actually going to be a huge aha moment or a significant realization for them. And for others, it's going to be a really good reminder. So what is it? Well, let me ask you a question first of all. Have you ever given advice to a friend or a family member and they didn't take the advice? Just recall for yourself, go back over different moments and different family members or different friends or different relations where you've spent hours, perhaps days, weeks, months, years, given the advice to them and they just didn't take it. And they just pursued their own path of what it is that they want to do. Now, how do you feel about the people that you recall in your mind? The people that you've given the advice to, but they didn't take the advice. How do you feel about yourself? Because typically what happens is most people will feel bad because they'll be questioning themselves in terms of, well, I could have done better, or perhaps I could have explained it in a different way, or I could have done more in relation to try and convince them to do or to take the advice of what you're providing for them. And ultimately what's happening is that you're feeling bad about yourself. What's my advice? It's don't even bother. Now that may seem a little bit harsh for a lot of people, but bear with me because I'm going to explain why. Because if you've been given advice to different people, they're never going to take it in the first place. And I mean by that is the people that are closest to you, your friends, your family members, your relations. Now, I learned this for myself many, many years ago, and I've been telling my clients ever since. And when they've applied it, it's made a significant difference to them. And when they completely understand the reason behind it, then they understand why they prevent themselves or hold themselves back from giving advice in the future. So this actually comes from the Bible, which is Luke 4:24. And in that particular phrase within the Bible, what it says is you cannot be a prophet in your homeland. Now, what I mean by that is that when people are familiar with you, meaning they're in your homeland, your family members, friends or relations, they'll never take your advice. And the instruction within that phrase within the Bible is you cannot be a prophet in your own town. They won't take the advice. So what you want to do is ultimately is select the people that will take your advice. Now, who are they? Well, they're people that aren't your friends, your family members or relations. Because think of it this way. When you're giving advice to somebody, ultimately what you're telling them or you're guiding them about what it is that's going to make their life better. And if they don't take the advice, well then what's going to happen are the consequences of your advice not being taken, meaning their life won't be better off or it may in fact actually be worse because they haven't taken your advice. Ultimately what you're doing is you're prophesizing for your clients, or not for your clients, you're prophesizing for your friends, your family members and relations in relation to why it is that they should take your advice. Now, again, that correlates back to the phrase that was in the Bible, you cannot be a prophet in your own hometown. They're too close to you. So the closer the person is, the less they'll actually take on board the advice that you're given. So do you want to have an easier life? And what I mean by that is an easier life from the perspective of you can make such a much bigger difference. But what tends to happen for a lot of people is that because they've given the advice to family members, friends or relations, and the person hasn't taken their advice, what tends to happen is the individuals start to self-sabotage. They'll be introspective to themselves from the perspective of they could have done better. I could have given different advice, or I could have done more. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're making yourself smaller. You're bringing yourself down. You're bringing your own belief and your own self-worth down. Now, from the perspective of self-care, that's not a good route to take. Because if you've listened to previous episodes on my podcast, what you'll understand that there's 3 pillars to confidence. There's self-care, there's self-belief, and self-worth. So by you barraging yourself for people not taking the advice that you've given, ultimately it will be primarily the people that are closest to you in your own hometown. So just remind yourself as you go forward in terms of when you're trying to give advice, are you giving the advice to friends, family, or relations? And just remind yourself of that phrase. You can't be a prophet in your own hometown. So just think back over the years. Who are the people that you've given advice to? Now, you can know that you've given the best advice, but they just haven't taken it. But how has it made you feel? And by knowing that feeling of the people that you've given that advice to and they haven't taken it, you know the impact of what that's going to have on you on an unconscious level as well. So my best advice to you right now is don't be a prophet in your own town. You can't be. That's the instruction that we were given in the Bible. You cannot be a prophet in your own town. So just remind yourself of that as you move forward. Now, if you want to find out more about how you can discover your own life purpose and how you can achieve more aspects of personal mastery, head over to our website, paulwilliamdays.com, and there's loads of different ways of how you can find out more. But again, I'm just going to remind you to just remember that phrase in your mind as you go throughout your day, your week, your month, your year, and remind yourself of that phrase. You cannot be a prophet in your own town. But until next time, I wish you every success.